The video that you're about to see is a project that I put together for Asus. But I thought, as well as sending it off to them, it would be a good idea to upload it here to YouTube, because I think it's a good general introduction to the common features of most dash cams. So if you're new to the idea of dash cams, you're wondering what's the point in one, whether it's worth installing it in your car and how hard they are to operate, then I think this is a good place to start. So without any further ado, on with the video. Asus have launched a range of dash cams, so they've asked me to make a video for them to explain to you why you'd need a dash cam in the first place and what some of the main features of a dash cam are and how you operate one. So without any further ado, let's get on with it. Now, Asus sent me their Ricoh Classic car camera to use as a demonstration device during this video, and I'm going to show you some footage from that later on. But let's have a look what's inside the box first of all. Now, first thing you do, make sure you take this little bit of plastic off the lens. It's protecting the lens, but you don't want to leave it on because it will make your video look a bit strange. Now, there's two different mounts inside the box. They both slide into that little part on the top of the camera there. This one here has an adhesive base that would remain on your windscreen, but of course you can unclip the camera from that base. Now the other one, suction cup, you can move that easier from vehicle to vehicle, and that also has a GPS antenna on it. Now it's entirely your choice whether or not you want to use the GPS functionality on this camera. You can just record video if you want on its own and it will work fine. However, if you plug the GPS antenna into it, it will also store alongside the video the location data, the speed data, and the G-force data, and you can then view that alongside the video, and I'll show you that later on. Now the camera is powered via this USB port. That requires 5 volts, but it plugs into your 12 volt lighter socket using this adapter, which has a nice amount of wire and a right angle plug. So the only thing we need to do now is put a memory card in it. It uses a micro SD card. I always use these Samsung 32 gig UHS-1 cards. Now look, this is putting it in the wrong way round. Notice it doesn't go in. Don't force it, just spin it around, put it in the other way. It's a spring-loaded slot and it should slide in easily like that. Only use a good quality micro SD card sourced from a trustworthy supplier. Now if you look at the chart here, you can see that 32 gig card that I put in there will hold over 7 hours of video in the highest quality setting. Let's put the camera inside the car now. So it's powered by the 12 volt accessory socket or lighter socket here. So you plug your power supply into that. Now the socket needs to be a switched one. By that I mean one that turns on and off automatically when you start and stop the car. Or in the case of my Mini, it turns on when you unlock it and turns off again 5 minutes after locking the car. Don't try plugging your camera into a USB socket because that's going to confuse it. The USB socket's designed for putting MP3s into your radio, not for powering a dash cam. Now I'm going to show you where I put the dash cam in my car here. This isn't where I'd normally put one, it's just for demonstration purposes. I would always recommend hiding the camera as much as possible behind your rear view mirror so it doesn't distract you when you're driving. Now the main reason for having a dash cam in your car is so that you've got the ability to provide video evidence of who was at fault in the event of a claim. Now you might have heard about cash for crash. That's when an insurance fraudster deliberately causes a crash so that they can claim against your insurance policy. A typical crash for cash claim would involve somebody pulling in front of your car, stopping when you least expect it so that you drive into the rear of their vehicle. Now, insurance companies, more often than not, assume that if you've driven into the back of someone, it's your fault because you should have left enough room so that you can stop. However, the cash for crash fraudsters quite often disconnect their brake lights that you've got no idea they were about to stop. So the best defence for something like this is to have video evidence of what actually occurred. And that video footage will show how many people were in the vehicle that you collided with. And that's very important because your typical insurance fraudster will always claim that his vehicle was full of passengers, all of whom have terrible whiplash, when you know in reality there are only perhaps 1 or 2 people present at the scene. But even when it comes to normal, more typical car crashes, bumps and scrapes, video evidence can prove who was at fault, which might save your no claims bonus, but at the very least it will expedite the whole claims process, might get you paid out quicker, and also it saves the insurance company money. And to recognise this, some insurance companies are now offering discounts off your annual premium if you say to them that you've got a dash cam fitted in your vehicle. Now, insurance and claims, of course, are some of the more serious reasons why you might want a dash cam in your car, but there are some other more pleasant reasons as well. For example, imagine you're a parent with a teenager that borrows your car at the weekend. You're obviously concerned, you hope they're driving it sensibly, but you've really got no idea unless you've got a dash cam. Then you can review the way they're driving and perhaps give them a few hints and tips on how they can improve their skills. And even on a light-hearted note, sometimes I've been driving along, I've seen something very strange happening on the road, and I've got home and said, "You'll never believe what I saw, but I'll tell you what, I'll show you." How many times has that happened to you when you've seen something, but you haven't got the evidence to show someone? So this seems like an appropriate moment to demonstrate how you can play back some of those video files that you've recorded. Well, the simplest way is to use the menus on the camera and play it back on the camera screen itself. This can prove to be very handy at the scene of an accident to show to a policeman, and I even know one chap who was pulled over by a policeman accused of speeding, showed him the footage on his camera to show he hadn't been speeding, and it was just a case of mistaken identity, and the policeman let him go on his way. Another method is to attach the camera up to your computer using a USB lead. The computer will then see it as an external drive, and you can pull the video files off the memory card. My preferred way though is to take the micro SD card out of the camera, leave the camera in the car, and plug the card into my computer. If you don't have an SD card reader on your computer, you can quite easily get a USB adapter and plug that into your USB socket. Regardless, whatever way you do it, it will show up as a drive on your computer. Now, on this memory card, when you format it in the camera, you get a Windows program there which enables you to play back these video files. I'm doing this on a Mac. I'm just going to show you natively what each of these files looks like. So you get two files. First off, you get an MOV file. That's the video file. As you can see here, I can just play it back on screen just like a video file that I'd recorded with a camcorder. Now below that, we've got a little file which, if I open it up in a text reader, you can see that's all the GPS data with the location and the G-sensor information, etc. Now this camera splits its video into 5-minute segments. I'll show you what I mean here. This is one of the clips. As you can see along the bottom in the timeline there, it goes up to 5 minutes on the right hand side. If I just drag it across and just pull it back a little bit from the end, I'll show you as I'm going over this bridge here, quite a narrow bridge, just about to come down the other side, and the video file stops. So I'll go to the next one down, and it carries on from there, and it splits the journey up, or the video up, into those little 5-minute segments so that when the memory card is full it can delete the oldest segment but it can still keep everything after that. And that's how one of these cameras works. It just recycles over and over the memory card and it never gets full. If you've got a Windows PC, you can install the software that you'll find on the micro SD card. That gives you this video playback program, which enables you to watch your video, synchronize with map data pulled through from the internet, with your location plotted using those GPS coordinates that are stored on the micro SD card. Also at the bottom right, we've got the speed information, and at the bottom left, we've got the G-sensor or G-force information, and there are alternative programs available for Windows as well as Mac. Now, I know there are people out there that'll be put off the idea of using a dashcam because it looks too complicated. It's full of options and menus and settings, but in reality, a dashcam operates automatically. Every time you start your car, it starts recording, and every time you stop your car, it stops recording, and that's as simple as it gets. And yes, there are menus, there are options, there are things you can change, but generally it'll just work straight out of the box, as long as of course you put a memory card in it. But let me show you through some of those settings in the menu so that you get a bit of an idea as to what they do and which ones you can change and which ones you might want to ignore. It's entirely up to you, but let me go through some of the settings on this particular camera now. Now the buttons below the screen correspond with the icons on the screen. So this is the one for the settings here, so we'll get into that. As you can see, there's a lot of options in here. I'm not going to go through all these. You're best experimenting with them later. However, I'm going to show you the 3 or 4 you need to change when you first get the camera. So the first thing, assuming you put your micro SD card in the camera, is to format it using the format menu option. So assuming we've formatted it in the camera, the next thing we need to do is change the time and date. So we'll go up and find that menu option. Now you can change the time and date manually by going through each individual thing, moving it up and down to get the time and date right. However, it will also, if you attach the GPS antenna, pull the time and date from that. There is one slight problem. GPS time is UTC time, so you'll need to knock it up or down by an hour or 2 to get into your local time. In the UK in summer, I do it +1, and that matches the accurate time. Now the next thing that we need to do is choose the resolution we're going to record in. You're best recording in one of the 1080p 30 modes, the top 2 that you can see on the screen here. The second one down says HDR. That's supposed to be high dynamic range. When you've got a lot of light and dark in the same scene, that might record slightly better than the other one. You'll need to experiment, but whichever one of those 2 you pick, you won't go too far wrong. In fact, you probably won't see any difference between them. And then the last thing that I'd recommend, go into the G-sensor sensitivity menu, make sure that is set to low. This is the shock sensor that's supposed to lock files, stop them getting overwritten when the camera receives a shock. But if you set it too high, it'll be locking files whenever the camera goes over a bump in the road. If you want to delete those files, by the way, all you have to do is format the card again. Now in the UK, it's more than likely you'll find yourself commuting to work in the dark at some points of the year. So it's very important that your dash cam records good quality images in low light. And that's especially true for people living in rural areas where there might not be any streetlights at all, and the only thing lighting up the road are your own car headlights. Now, I've been reviewing dash cams for quite a few years, so as a result I get quite a lot of emails about them. But unfortunately the most common email I get is from people who wish they'd installed one before they'd had the accident. People tend to install a dash cam after they've had a nasty experience, much the same way as if somebody has their house burgled, they tend to improve the security afterwards. So my advice to you is don't delay, install a dash cam as soon as possible. Now, if after watching that you've wisely decided that it's a good idea to fit a dash cam in your car, if you look up in the video description and click show more, you'll find in the box there's links to places where you can buy the Ricoh Classic from, although I haven't really done a full test on that one. I have got another link up there though to my website where I maintain a list of recommended cameras from the many different models that I've tested. But that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.